Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 News. Lewis Hamilton has launched something of an attack off track today on Max Verstappen, suggesting that all of Hamilton's teammates he's had through his career are all better than all of the teammates that Verstappen has had alongside him for the last several years, basically implying that Verstappen's current success isn't as impressive as it on paper appears. Is this true? Are Hamilton's words actually correct on this one? We'll look at all the details today and their respective teammates and whether this actually adds up. Very much on Twitter, your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. So let's begin with, of course, the new contract that Hamilton signed just yesterday. Lots of praise for Hamilton, even from Verstappen himself, saying great partnership, great driver. Even Alonso continues their kind of a very fun relationship between Alonso and Hamilton, saying, if I was a team boss, I would keep Hamilton until he's like 80 over a Formula 2 driver unless anyone else can actually prove that he's faster. So some nice words there exchanged, and Hamilton's using the leapfrog of the fact that his contract has been signed to, launch something of an attack on Max Verstappen as far as I see it. So he was asked some questions about this, and he gives his thoughts on Red Bull, how much they're dominating right now, how well they're performing, and how well Max is performing on and off the track. Just everything Red Bull are doing, the car, the strategy, the operational stuff, and the consistent performances of Max, very impressive. But I'm sure that Hamilton's looking at the record. Max is probably going to get 10 wins in a row this weekend. He could probably get 18 in a row by the end of the season. And as a result, there's been lots of talk. How good is Max relative to Hamilton, relative to Schumacher? Where does he sit on an all-time level, Max Verstappen, at the moment? If he wins this title, wins next year's title, etc, etc. And Hamilton's looking to dull that down a little bit and say, hey, look, I've got a lot of these records, but I was getting a lot of these records against far more competent teammates than Verstappen currently is, trying to downplay Verstappen's success. Maybe you could say, well, look, Hamilton can't compete on track because of the car, so he's got to try and compete off track, and fair enough. It's spicy. This makes Formula 1. Is he wrong, though? Not necessarily, because a lot of his points here do have some justification behind them.
They're firing on all cylinders right now. The car is incredible. The driver's doing an amazing job, very consistent. The pit crew are doing a great job. The mechanics are doing a good job. Strategy's doing a good job, like on point. You can't fault them. In my personal opinion, Valtteri and actually all my teammates have been stronger than the teammates that Max has had. Jenson, Fernando, George, Valtteri. Nico. Yeah. No, I'm sorry, I've had so many, so yeah, absolutely. These guys have all been very, very strong, very consistent, and Max is not racing against anyone like that.
So quite the statement really there from Hamilton, suggesting that from Valtteri and further back, all of his teammates have been better, stronger, faster, more consistent than anyone Max has raced against. Now, I will say absolutely, on average, Hamilton has had far stronger teammates than Verstappen. I don't really think anyone's going to deny that. The idea that all of his teammates have been better than all of Verstappen's teammates is a slightly, that's a bit of a step too far as I'm concerned. We'll have a look at it right here. So these were Hamilton's records, actually. This is after just one season of Bottas, but just his record against Alonso when he first came into the sport, against Alonso year one was slower in quality just about, but he actually beat him on points that year. They both had 109, and Hamilton won because he had more race wins or whatever. And then Heikki Kovalainen. Now, it's funny that, Paul Kovalainen, who actually interviewed Hamilton last year, probably around this time last year, Hamilton completely forgot that Kovalainen even existed here, I imagine. And he was, he was like a Bottas driver in some sense that, he was, pretty good in qualifying, Kovalainen. In the race, though, it wasn't the case so much. But, even then, Kovalainen beaten 65.2% of the time or so. Like, it's not like Kovalainen was a bad driver, but I think he was he only P7 or something in 2008 with the car that Hamilton won the title with. So, Kovalainen, I don't really think you can make the argument that he was better than, let's say, a Ricciardo in 2017 or something. And that's maybe the argument that will be raised here in a second against what Hamilton says. But then after Kovalainen, Button for 3 seasons, Rosberg for 4 seasons, and then Bottas, of course, for plenty of seasons after that. And now George Russell arguably, has the talent to be a future Formula 1 world champion. And just looking at this, these are his teammates. Ignore Nick de Vries, who for some reason is on this website, I think because he did a couple of free practice sessions. But as you can see on the left here, we've got Valtteri Bottas, Nico Rosberg, world champion in 2016, Jenson Button, world champion in 2009, George Russell, right, very talented. I mean, that's the best driver pairing on the grid. maybe Lando and Oscar and McLaren, but apart from that, I think that it's hands down Hamilton and Russell. Then Heikki Kovalainen, but Kovalainen, race winner, pole sitter, right? Not to be, discredited as a driver. And then you've got Fernando Alonso, of course, two-time world champion at the time when Hamilton teamed with him in his first year in the sport. So, look, are all of these guys at the time that they teamed with Hamilton better than all of these guys that have teamed with Verstappen? Not necessarily, as I say. Kovalainen, probably not. And Ricciardo from 2016 to 18, okay, Verstappen did take some steps ahead of Ricciardo towards the end of that tenure, but, he was a great driver for Red Bull during that time. And looking back at his teammates, so, ignore some of the ones on the bottom here, but really we're looking at Gasly, Sainz, Albon, Perez, and Ricciardo. Starting with Sainz, I mean, Sainz is a good driver, nothing special. And also you've got to consider that at the time that he teamed with Gasly and Albon, they weren't the drivers they are today. I think Gasly today is, a good driver, solid to good. Alex Albon is arguably a good to very good driver the way he's performing right now. But at the time, they weren't the same drivers they are today. Part of that might be the way that things work at Red Bull, the car design, I know there's been talk about that, and the pressure associated with it for some of these guys. And then Perez today is, solid driver for sure, but again, nothing special. So, look, I think Hamilton, I don't think anyone's going to deny that Hamilton's had better teammates on average than Verstappen's had. Does his full statement actually, can you justify his full statement? Quite possibly not. But I think it's interesting that Hamilton's saying this because it's quite clear that with all the success Verstappen's having, there's all the talk about Verstappen, right? Where does he sit all time? How long is he going to keep this record for? And Hamilton's probably looking at his 9 wins in a row and saying like, if you were teaming with some of the guys that I was teaming with, that wouldn't be the case. Some of those weekends you'd have been done by your teammate. And that could well be true. Now, when history looks back on Verstappen's career, is it going to care with the guys that he teamed with? Maybe not, but Hamilton's just trying to let people know that, like, look, I achieved all this stuff with teammates of, on average, a far higher caliber than Verstappen has. Therefore, kind of saying that, my race wins, my championships have been in some sense more impressive, which maybe is true, but, the numbers don't necessarily lie at the end of the day, and 9, 10, 11, 18 race wins in a row is still 9, 10, 18 race wins in a row if Verstappen can achieve that. And even as, Verstappen has responded to some of these comments, some of these suggestions over the last few days when Toto Wolff said, the car's designed for him. Verstappen said, that's all BS. The car's made to be as fast as it can be, and I'm the one who can handle it. So maybe there's two sides of the story here. And even Russell said recently that pretty much any driver could win in the Red Bull. And he says, yeah, sure, but, not in the way that we're winning, not in the way that I'm delivering these results and the consistency with which Verstappen is doing it, which is undeniably, incredibly impressive. So, that's the drama of the day. I'm sure there'll be further reaction and, well, hopefully some good on-track battles between these two, because the Mercedes is looking a little bit tasty this weekend. As of recording, it's only free practice 1. These were of the fastest laps, so Russell was actually fastest in a lot of the acceleration zones, but and the Ferrari with the fastest top speed, because the Red Bull's running a bit more wing, so it's faster in some of the corners and in the braking zones, but in terms of top speed, the Ferrari is the fastest car this weekend. So far, Red Bull might turn their engine up over time, and Ferrari have put in a brand new, for both Ferrari drivers, brand new ICE, brand new turbo, brand new MGUH UK, and exhaust. So, as they did last year, they will be absolutely maxing out this engine to try and keep up with Max, or just try and get a podium would be good for Ferrari. They should be good around here. Their car, with the better straight line speed they've achieved this year with some of their design choices, should be better than it was, maybe not necessarily last year relative to Red Bull, but it should be much better than it was in Zandvoort, shall we say. So Ferrari hoping for a good weekend in front of the home crowd, and if something goes wrong for Verstappen or potentially Perez, then things could change around. This was the FP1 classification. I'm recording this just as FP2 is about to start, so I'll probably discuss that tomorrow in addition to qualifying. Verstappen was P1 as usual. A lot of these actually on the hard tyres, down to I think maybe Norris or maybe Hamilton, Norris. I think Hamilton was on the hards. Norris might have been on the softs for this lap or the mediums or something. But yeah, relatively competitive. But the single lap pace isn't necessarily so relevant. Carlos Sainz with a good lap here to go P2. But it's got to be said that the Red Bull setup seems more designed for the race than for one lap pace. So if they're already the fastest in one lap pace, then, you know, God forbid you're going to catch them in the race, right? Because you're not. But, so that's one side of the story. The other piece, though, to mention is that Mercedes have brought a couple of tweaks. I think McLaren have brought something like 6 upgrades this weekend as well. So tweaks for Aston, tweaks for Mercedes to their rear wing and beam wing, circuit-specific stuff to try and increase their straight line speeds. And the Mercedes Mercedes hasn't been great with straight line speed the last couple of seasons. This year it's still a few kph off the pace where they want to be. I'm pretty sure they were slower actually than Red Bull in this session, despite running less rear wing, which is, you know, just a massive advantage to the Red Bull right now. But this is probably maybe slightly more telling. Okay, this is just FP1, but this is long run average telemetry. Russell on the long runs was the fastest car, with Hamilton not far behind. Sainz actually, was further back than that, and then it was Perez and then Verstappen. Now, if we actually look at some of the telemetry data here, Verstappen was far slower in terms of top speed than these other guys. He was actually 15 kph down on Perez, going into turn 1. So, that's wing level, but that's also probably engine mode, so you can imagine that that's causing a lot of these differences here. But Verstappen was on average about 7.5, 8 tenths slower than the Mercedes. So the Perez run here on the long runs was a 1:26.38, and Max averaged a 1:26.58, and Hamilton and Russell. So you get different data depending on how you look at it. But yeah, the Mercedes are actually looking pretty quick, but a 1:26.1 on average over their laps, and it depends if you exclude some of the outliers here for Verstappen as well. And then, Sainz and Leclerc, and Sainz looking pretty good as well, was only a couple of tenths off the Mercedes. So it's like the first long runs we've seen. Changes, tweaks will be made. Seems like Verstappen's engine was turned down quite considerably. And over the course of a, let's say, 30 lap stint, as opposed to an 8 or 9 lap stint, then you're probably going to see the better tyre degradation of the Red Bull due to the higher wings really come into its own. So don't read too much into these numbers, but just to say that more than likely Mercedes won't be too far away in race pace and where they need to be. The Ferrari will be competitive. The Red Bull's going to be the fastest, and technically Perez was faster than Max in FP1, but that will not, by any means shape the picture of the weekends. And just one final update to mention for you guys. We saw a few weeks ago now rumours that Pirelli had done the deal with Formula 1 and they were going to stay as the tyre supplier for the next few years. But apparently this deal is not yet done, and Bridgestone have come through. So Bridgestone were a tyre manufacturer back in the day, and many people would like to see either a new tyre war with Bridgestone and Pirelli, or just straight up go back to Bridgestone. Maybe it's kind of the grass is always greener thing, but I don't know. I think that Bridgestone could do a better job with these tyres than Pirelli are doing, is my personal opinion on it. But I might be proved wrong in due course, and I kind of hope that I am proved wrong in the sense that I hope Bridgestone come in. So it's a little bit different to what we've had for the last several years. But Formula 1, understandably, kind of want to keep the status quo, keep Pirelli in, no risk involved and everything. But Bridgestone are offering more money, and now apparently they're saying, you know what, we'll give you even more money. Like, we're really confident we can do this. We think we could do a good job. Like, here's our new offer. So possibly it could be delayed further as Bridgestone now put forward a more competitive approach, which could be really exciting. So yeah, stay tuned for that as we see lots of Twitter interaction on this one, x.com interaction on this one, because people kind of want to see something happen with the tyres. One of the most important aspects in Formula 1, hands down. Very much intrigued to hear your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.